Article 25, Surcharge on Specific Residential Development. The purpose of this article is to reauthorize a Home Rule petition to the Massachusetts Legislature that was previously approved under Article 6 of Special Town Meeting 2020-2. The previous petition was considered during 2 legislative sessions and must receive local approval to be considered again. The motion from 2020 has received minor updates in collaboration with stakeholders to provide more implementation flexibility to the Select Board and town staff. The prior 2020 petition was first introduced into the 192nd legislative session into the House, was adjudicated by the Joint Committee on Housing, and was reported favorably by the committee. It was then passed by the House and sent to the Senate, but ran out of time when the legislative session ended. In the next legislative session, the House bill was adjudicated by the Joint Committee on Revenue and was reported favorably by the committee. However, this report was after a significant delay, which precluded the bill from moving much further before the end of the session. Lexington had a similar Home Rule petition for a surcharge on commercial development and was signed into law by the governor in 2025 and will be implemented by the town in 2027. Approval of Article 25 would allow the Select Board to petition the General Court to enact special legislation to allow a surcharge on specific residential development that would apply only in the town of Lexington. If enacted, the Select Board would control the parameters of the surcharge, and the town staff would oversee the implementation. If passed at this town meeting, it could be 2 to 4 years before enactment, and then another 1.5 years before the town to fully implement. The term community housing refers to low and moderate income housing for individuals and families, including senior housing. Low-income housing refers to persons or families with an annual income of 80% of the area-wide median income, and moderate income housing refers to those making 100% of the area-wide median income. Now I will talk about what exactly the special legislation is and how it would work in Lexington if enacted. A new residential development community housing surcharge would be applied to new single and two-family building permits on parcels where an existing single or two-family has been demolished. The surcharge will be applied on a dollars per square foot basis on the gross floor area of the new structures permitted, and the surcharge does not apply to community housing projects nor to similar reconstruction of existing dwellings. To set the initial surcharge rate, the town would commission a study to determine a set of suitable rate ranges. The Select Board would then establish the initial rate, set forth a process to implement the surcharge, and make it effective no later than 18 months after the enactment of the legislation. The Select Board may also adopt additional requirements, exemptions, and regulations to implement and enforce the surcharge. The surcharge will be collected between the issuance of the building permit and the issuance of the certificate of occupancy, and all surcharge revenues would be deposited into the town's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Lastly, the town would adjust the surcharge rate for inflation on an annual basis and report on surcharge receipts and outcomes periodically. Next, I will answer some common questions regarding this article. First, why are we considering a residential development surcharge? The town completed its most recent comprehensive plan in 2022, and the housing section has a number of policy objectives relevant to this effort. First, the plan calls for the town to develop new sources of funding for community housing beyond Community Preservation Act resources, and directly calls for advocacy and support of the prior version of this legislative effort. The plan also has an objective to develop policy that requires developers of new market rate housing to provide housing for lower income residents. And the plan has an objective to preserve the spectrum of housing in our inventory and to seek workable solutions to address the demolition of smaller dwellings. The town in recent years has continued to work to both add or increase inclusionary housing contribution requirements across most of the residential development options in the zoning bylaw. These contributions have been designed to be proportional to the scale and attributes of development. For larger developments, built units. For smaller developments, payment in lieu of built units. This article would further these efforts by creating a proportional payment contribution from single and two-family developments where there currently is no requirement. Next, what are the issues with single-lot residential development? An analysis was performed that looked at redevelopment of single-family homes from 2007 to 2024 and revealed that over that time period, over 14% of the housing inventory present in 2007 had been replaced with new construction. When new construction occurs, the new houses were on average 2.6 times larger than the ones they replaced. Similarly, the cost of new houses were on average 2.8 times more than the cost of the houses that were demolished and replaced. Comparing the inventory in 2007 to the one in 2024, you can see some trends in the size of housing. The vertical axis represents the number of houses added or removed from the inventory, and the horizontal axis represents the size of houses in terms of gross floor area. The red bars represent the number of smaller or moderately sized houses that have been removed from the inventory, and the blue bars represent a spectrum of significantly larger sizes of new houses that were added. You can also visualize these changes by looking at a parcel map, where a red parcel indicates a property that was redeveloped between 2007 and 2024. Each of the 4 images shows an example neighborhood and the scale of redevelopment over this period, affecting small, medium, and large lots. While looking at the total number of houses is informative, it is also important to look at more recent trends just this past year. Looking at all of the single-family houses that were redeveloped in 2025 indicated that the average sale price for a property with a house that was demolished was on average just over $1.05 million. If you model what it would cost to own that average house with some common mortgage parameters and estimated property taxes, results in a projected monthly cost of roughly $6,600 per month to own. Looking at all of the houses that resulted from this redevelopment indicated that the average sale price for new construction was on average just over $3.1 million. If you model what it would cost to own that $3.1 million house with the same mortgage parameters and property tax estimates, results in a projected monthly cost of roughly $19,500 per month. Directly related to housing costs is the amount of income needed to own housing. The federal area-wide median income level that includes Lexington is just over $160,000 per year in 2025. If you look more specifically at the population of Lexington, the median household income is just over $238,000 per year. If you take the average cost of the demolished house on the last slide and incorporate federal housing spending guidelines, it would require an annual income of over $265,000 to own the average demolished house without being cost burdened. Similarly, if you look at the average cost of new construction after demolition, it would require an annual income of over $783,000 to own without being cost burdened. As a point of comparison, if you look at the average cost to own a new condo unit in a multifamily development that are currently being achieved under our MBTA bylaw, it would require an annual income of over $377,000 to own without being cost burdened. Across these different options, the cost of housing is out of reach for many income levels, and each time a single-family home is redeveloped, it becomes an option that is only attainable by a very small number of households. Next, why are two-family lots included? Overall, there are very few lots in Lexington that are zoned for two-family homes, and even fewer that are being redeveloped. When redevelopment does occur, what we are seeing are very large structures that are being built that are in effect two single-family homes that share a party wall. Similarly, the costs are significantly more than the homes that were replaced, with the unit in the building pictured on the left selling for $2.2 million in 2025, and a unit in the building pictured on the right selling for just over $2 million in 2024. Next, what amount of surcharge revenue could be expected? It's important to note that the surcharge would apply equally to all property owners who meet the surcharge criteria, including property owners who may redevelop their houses to either live in the new one or to sell. Outreach in 2020 with local developers indicated that builders may factor in the cost of the surcharge in a number of ways, including at the time of offers to homeowners to buy their land, or by modulating construction parameters to absorb the cost of the surcharge, or by adding the cost of the surcharge to the sale price of the newly constructed home. Here's an example of a 10,640 square foot gross floor area house in Lexington. For a hypothetical surcharge rate of $2.50 per square foot would result in a total surcharge of $26,600. This house sold for $2.95 million, and this hypothetical surcharge would represent less than 1% of the total sale price. The same exercise for the single house just discussed was applied to single-family redevelopment projects over a 5-year period from 2019 to 2024 for 3 different hypothetical surcharge rates and for 3 different gross floor area thresholds that would determine when the surcharge is applicable. For a $2.50 per square foot rate, the surcharge may have resulted in $6.8 million depending on the gross floor area threshold chosen. The reason the surcharge revenue is largely the same across each floor area threshold is that the majority of houses over this period exceeded the thresholds. For a $5 per square foot surcharge, revenue may have resulted in approximately $13.6 million, and for a $7.50 per square foot surcharge, revenue may have resulted in approximately $20.4 million. With the surcharge funds in the Affordable Housing Trust, the trustees can allocate those funds to create new community housing, such as acquiring land for future projects, buying down market rate units in multifamily developments, or funding entities such as LexHab and others who can build new income-restricted units and accessory apartments. Surcharge proceeds can also be used to fund entities who can acquire and renovate existing smaller housing or support other specific housing activities and needs. Thank you for your consideration, and I hope that you will support this article.